Labour Secretary warns employers to take heat stress guidelines seriously. Government urged to care more about carers of children. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky has arrived in Italy and is expected to meet the Pope. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. The new guidance notes on prevention of heat stress at work will be launched on Monday. Secretary for Labour and Welfare Chris Sun said while the notes are for guidance, he does not rule out the possibility that employers could be prosecuted if they violate guidelines deliberately. Mimo Singai reports.
The Labour Department's new guidance on prevention of heat stress at work will be introduced on Monday. The purpose of the guidance is to protect the well-being of employees under hot working environments and prevent them from getting heat stroke. The notes include 3 levels of heat stress at work warnings: amber, red, and black. However, the guidance is advisory and not compulsory. Addressing concerns that the guidelines are too complicated, Secretary for Labour and Welfare Chris Sun said they cover a wide range of scenarios because conditions differ in each workplace.
When you look at the risk of heat stroke in workplaces, it varies a lot. So it depends on, of course, depends on weather conditions, but also the very unique situation of each and every workplace and the measures in place is all have a role to play.
Sun said there could be potential legal consequences for employers who do not comply with the guidance.
Those who have clearly violate the guidance in a very blatant way, we can pursue them by using the employer's general duty under our law. So eventually they are subject to legal punishment.
Sun also commented on progress in the government's top talent pass scheme. He said 17,000 applicants have been approved out of 27,000 applications. Mimo Sinai, TVB News.
Government Pandemic Advisor Professor David Ho said while the seasonal flu peaked in Hong Kong last month, the recent COVID surge has yet to do so. Speaking on a radio program, Professor Ho said the number of flu cases have decreased since early this month, but he said the COVID situation is different, urging high-risk groups to receive a booster vaccine dose. However, Ho nonetheless believes the reintroduction of a mask mandate and social distancing measures are unnecessary unless new variants emerge leading to high mortality. Zunzi's satirical cartoons, which have come under government criticism on a number of occasions, will stop publication in Hong Kong newspaper Ming Pao from tomorrow. In the cartoon's final edition today, a few rocks with words that read "No democracy element needed" was drawn above a plaque with District Council written on it. Another Zunzi cartoon published in the paper's supplement saw 2 characters waving and walking away with an umbrella under the rain. Ming Pao announced it will stop running the cartoon 2 days ago without offering an explanation. The 40-year-old cartoon that often satired Hong Kong politics has come under government criticism over the past months. Chief Executive John Lee earlier said a media organization that's responsible must consider the message it delivers to the public. An alliance of non-governmental organizations found in a survey that around 74% of child caregivers are full-time housewives from low-income families who often have to take care of children alone. The group urges the government to provide policy support such as subsidies for those families. Vericon Lin reports.
Ms. Chan is a single mother. She's a full-time caregiver of a 6-year-old autistic daughter. The 2 live in a subdivided flat in Tai Kok Tsui and are kept afloat by the comprehensive social security assistance. She said that after her daughter turned 6, the family's financial situation deteriorated sharply, as a lot of money was spent on the child's physical and speech therapy in order to prevent muscle degeneration and regression of speech. For low-income families, child-rearing is tough. Community organization Care for Carers found in a survey of over 700 child caregivers that around 74% of respondents belong to low-income families, earning less than $10,000 per month. 96% of the respondents were women, most of whom were housewives and the sole carer of the children. Some, just like Ms. Chen, are single parents and have to shoulder the responsibility of raising a child alone.
First challenges is their financial difficulties is very big because they don't have enough, because they are grassroots families, so they don't have enough family income, and they need to spend a lot of money on their children. For example, they need to spend money on the training if their children have SEN.
The group urges the government to introduce subsidies for child caregivers, especially high-risk groups such as single parents, kids with special needs, and those who have to care for multiple children and/or the elderly.
The second difficulty is the stress. They are very stressful on taking care of their children because they always, some of them taking their children by themselves only because they don't have, probably they are from single families, so they don't have others, they don't have spouse to help them to take care of the families.
Lam added that most carers struggle with mental health issues such as anxiety and depression. Apart from subsidies, the group also hopes the government will set up a 24-hour hotline to offer emotional support for these caregivers. Veronica Lin, TVB News.
Today and tomorrow, the MTR Corporation is offering half-price discounts as part of its Thank You Day promotion. It covers most MTR services, including the East Rail Line's trains to and from Lo Wu and Lok Ma Chau. Passengers can take the MTR, light rail and MTR buses at half price using their Octopus or QR codes. Whilst it can be used simultaneously with other promotional offers, it does not, however, include first-class tickets or the Airport Express. Last year, the MTR Corp was fined $100 million for delays and accidents. It then made the decision to roll out a series of thank you days, 2 of which took place last month on the 8th and 9th. Overseas, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky arrived in Italy for talks with his Prime Minister and President before heading to the Vatican to meet Pope Francis. Meanwhile, Russia acknowledged Friday that its forces have fallen back north of the battlefield city of Bakhmut after a new offensive by Ukraine forces. Tracy Furness has more.
The Ukrainian military released footage on Friday showing an offensive unit fighting and capturing territory near the besieged city of Bakhmut. The bodycam footage shows soldiers dismounting an armoured personnel vehicle straight into gunfire. The city's governor, Pavlo Kyrylenko, said the Ukrainian army has had success in the area of Bakhmut. The Ukrainian Ministry of Defence said that their forces have confirmed a 2-kilometre advance in the area. This, as drone footage of the devastated city of Marinka in the Donetsk region was posted by the head of the Ukrainian presidential administration, Andrei Yermak, on his Telegram channel on Friday. He writes, Marinka, a town that was destroyed by the Russians. Each such crime has become a historical stain for Russia. And today, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has arrived in Rome, Italy, amid tight security. He arrived at a military airfield at Rome's Ciampino airport. Italian Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani was on hand to greet him. Zelensky will hold talks with President Sergio Mattarella and Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni before visiting the Vatican to see Pope Francis. Meanwhile, the war in Ukraine has become a hot topic ahead of the annual Eurovision Song Contest, which will be held in Liverpool in England this weekend. Ukraine won the contest last year, but is now fighting Russia's invasion, so cannot host the show this year. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky had a speech prepared, but the European Broadcasting Union that runs Eurovision refused to allow it, said that letting Zelensky participate would breach the non-political nature of the event. Last year's winners of the Eurovision Song Contest, Ukraine's Kalush Orchestra, defended their president's bid to speak via video link during the show. We think President Zelensky is just trying to use all the platforms to talk about Ukraine. And actually, we think he wanted to thank European people, said recording artist Timothy Muzichuk. The BBC has urged the organisers to reverse their decision and let Zelensky speak. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says it would be fitting for the Ukrainian president to make an address, as the values he is fighting are not political but fundamental. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
The US Treasury Secretary and the British Chancellor of the Exchequer have held talks on the sidelines of the G7 finance ministers meeting in Niigata, Japan. Janet Yellen and Jeremy Hunt said there was clear evidence the G7 had limited Russia's ability to ramp up its Ukraine actions.
You're absolutely right to start with the abhorrent invasion of Ukraine, where the economic partnership between the UK, the US, European and other countries has had a very significant impact in denting Russia's ability to fund its war operation.
Hunt and Yellen also discussed the need to have a better relationship with the Global South to secure more support for them. The G7 Leaders Summit takes place in Hiroshima next week. State Councillor and Foreign Minister Qin Gang is in Norway as he continued a diplomatic tour of Europe, and Vice President Han Zheng was visiting the Netherlands.
Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre met visiting Chinese State Councillor and Foreign Minister Qin Gang in Oslo on Friday. Both sides exchanged views over Ukraine. Qin said China hopes to work with the Norwegian government to promote a political settlement for the Ukraine crisis.
China will send its special envoy to Ukraine in the near future, and we will send him to Norway, or we will give our Norwegian friends an update in Beijing. And we look forward to working with Norwegian government in the peaceful political solution.
In a statement from the Norwegian Prime Minister's office, Støre told Qin that China plays a key role on a wide range of issues from international politics to business and trade. Støre added Norway is concerned about human rights situation in Xinjiang as well as developments in Hong Kong. Qin Gang said the Chinese government has made unremitting efforts to protect human rights and that Hong Kong, Xinjiang and Tibet-related issues are not human rights issues. He said they are issues related to safeguarding China's sovereignty, security and development interests. Qin said China firmly opposes external forces that take advantage of these issues to create instability in China. Qin added all nations should work together in areas such as climate change and Arctic concerns. In another high-level visit, Chinese Vice President Han Zheng met Dutch King Willem-Alexander and Prime Minister Mark Rutte in the Netherlands. Han said there has to be mutual respect and understanding between civilized nations, adding there are no fundamental conflicts of interest between China and Europe. Rutte noted China is an important trade partner for the Netherlands and is willing to strengthen bilateral ties.
Still to come on tonight's news. European Union meeting is dominated by China and Ukraine issues. Twitter has found a new CEO officially. And new portrait of King Charles III released. Welcome back to TVB News. European Union foreign ministers have held a one-day meeting in Sweden with Ukraine and the influence of China at the top of the agenda. The EU ministers want Beijing to play a bigger role in ending the war in Ukraine. Nazvi Karim has more.
European Union ministers agree that China is a global player politically and economically, and that Beijing must be engaged. But at a one-day meeting of EU ministers in Stockholm on Friday, the bloc came to two conclusions regarding China. They want Beijing to use its influence with Russia to end the war with Ukraine. And they want to recalibrate their economic relationship with Beijing without wholesale decoupling. The EU's head of foreign affairs, Josep Borrell, says China cannot expect a normal relationship with the European countries without trying to influence Russia to withdraw from Ukraine.
On Ukraine, the European Union-China relations will not develop normally if China doesn't push Russia to withdraw from Ukraine. And we call to China, as a permanent member of the Security Council of the United Nations, to influence over Russia to stop this war and to play a constructive role to achieve a just peace for Ukraine. If I don't like your behavior, you cannot expect to be good friends. It's that simple as that.
Before Moscow's invasion of Ukraine, the European Union became heavily dependent on Russian gas. They call this a strategic mistake, which they want to avoid with Beijing, with the EU reliant on China for technologies such as solar panels, telecoms equipment, batteries, raw material and critical minerals.
It's rival, partner and competitor. And there's a key word which is engage. We have to engage with China in many fronts, for many different issues, and at the same time we have to compete with China and to decrease our dependencies when these dependencies become too big and so risky.
Borrell insisted that the aim was not to decouple the European and Chinese economies, but merely to rebalance the relationship so that the EU can adopt an independent approach to Beijing while maintaining a close relationship with the United States. Foreign Minister Qin Gang recently urged Europe to refrain from politicizing trade and economic cooperation. Nazri Karim, TVB News.
In the U.S., thousands of migrants were trying to enter the country at the end of a pandemic-related restrictions known as Title 42, causing widespread chaos and even tragedies. NBC has the story.
Tonight, the pressure building on the border and in cities across America. With Title 42 scrapped, a new era of immigration in the U.S. is kicking off with all-time high illegal border crossings. Migrants camping between border walls, crossing rivers, and lining up for hours to be processed. In just the last 3 days, more than 32,000 migrants have crossed illegally. The White House says they're adding thousands of beds to detention centers. But local mayors say they need help now.
I'm worried about reaching overcapacity, and the issue we have now is that a lot of the immigrants now do not have the financial resources to leave, to take a bus, to take an airplane.
Repatriation flights are landing all over Latin America, but the volume of migrants outpacing the courts and the deportation systems.
So Title 42 has come and gone, but the flow of migrants has not stopped. This is El Paso. On the other side of that border is Juarez, and you can see the group of migrants that are being led into this bus to then be processed.
And now the White House facing back-to-back legal blows. A federal judge blocking the Biden administration's plan to release migrants into the U.S. with no immigration court date and no way to track them after Florida's attorney general sued. And the ACLU is suing as well, saying a cornerstone of the Biden plan to require migrants to make an appointment before reaching a point of entry is, quote, virtually impossible for asylum-seeking migrants.
The lawsuits we are facing, frankly, from both sides of the aisle, clearly demonstrate just how fundamentally broken our immigration system is.
And tonight, an investigation underway to figure out how a migrant teen died at a federally contracted facility in Florida housing unaccompanied minors. A person familiar with the matter tells NBC News the 17-year-old Angel Eduardo Maradiaga from Honduras received a clean bill of health on May 5th, but was hospitalized 2 days ago. HHS saying investigators are reviewing all clinical details and are in touch with the family. This as cities across the country are running out of space to house migrants. Just this morning, more buses arriving in New York City from Texas.
Elon Musk has confirmed that Linda Yaccarino from U.S. media company Comcast NBC Universal will be the new CEO of Twitter. Yaccarino is a longtime advertising executive. Matthew Bray reports.
Elon Musk announced Friday that Linda Yaccarino will become the new chief executive officer at Twitter. The two met in April at a marketing event in Miami Beach where they sparred over content moderation. At one point, Yaccarino asked Musk whether he was willing to let advertisers influence his vision for Twitter. Musk shut her down, saying he was willing to lose advertising dollars to keep freedom of speech paramount. So now Yaccarino has the job Musk once termed "if anyone is foolish enough to take." The financial analyst believes while it is a smart move, there could be trouble ahead.
Yeah, Musk clearly continues to own Twitter, CTO. He's going to have the major seat at the table. But this is him taking a stage left, a little step back, which is important given the focus on Tesla and SpaceX and what's needed now. But again, playing nice in the sandbox with Musk is easier said than done.
Luring advertisers back is critical for Twitter after many fled in the early months after his takeover of the social media platform. Musk said in late April that advertisers had returned but provided no details.
Look, I think this is someone that's going to be much more aggressive on advertising, really trying to monetize the platform, and ultimately, after what's been a very shaky 6 months, get advertisers back onto the platform.
So while Musk believes he can turn Twitter into an everything app, his selection of an advertising veteran signals digital ads will remain a core focus of the business.
I think the biggest problem for Yaccarino is really going to be working alongside Musk himself. Yaccarino and Musk, of course, have a good relationship, but he is mercurial, he is unpredictable, and it's still debatable how much he's actually going to empower Yaccarino to lead the company.
Matthew Bray, TVB News.
Thailand will go the polls tomorrow after a month of campaigning by the country's political parties. Sunday's vote could potentially usher in a new government for the first time in nearly a decade. Thailand's election workers checked ballot papers and boxes ahead of tomorrow's polls that could see the military's influence rolled back amid expected large gains for the opposition. Each registered voter will cast 2 ballots, one for a member of parliament and the other for their favoured party. The latest coronation photos of King Charles III have been officially released Friday. King Charles is shown with his son Prince William and grandson Prince George, the 2 future heirs to the throne. The photos were taken by royal photographer Hugo Burnand and were taken in the throne room at Buckingham Palace. That's the news for tonight. Thanks for joining us.